Podsters, episode 11.
Woo, number 11. That's what we're doing. Yes. Welcome, everybody, to the Podsters podcast, number 11. How about that last podcast, number 10?
Yeah, did you guys like it?
With our guest, Kim. Shout out to my girl, Kim. Whoop, whoop. That was fun having her on the podcast. I really enjoyed having her with us. I hope you guys did too. Today's podcast, I would like to kind of dedicate to my grandfather who passed this week. It's been very difficult to deal with, nonetheless, because he's my grandfather and he was a great man. And I have to say that I discovered some very interesting things about him. He was a Superman, if you will. You know, I always thought that my dad was my hero. He was my Superman, and he still is. But in the bereavement room at the hospital, I have to say that I discovered some new things about him. My aunts and uncles were sharing their stories, their memories of my grandfather, and I was just amazed by the things that I didn't really know about him, which really saddens me because I didn't know that. You know, I just didn't know the things that they talked about. One thing that I really didn't know about him was that he was such a hard worker. He was a dedicated family man. I mean, I always knew he was a dedicated family man, but he had 8 grandchildren.
Well, but let's back up. How many children did he have?
He had a total of 8 grandchildren. One passed in...
I think you're going wrong here. He did not have 8 grandchildren.
Oh, I'm sorry. Woo! Let's backtrack here. I'm still not thinking straight. But he had a total of 8 children. Mm-hmm. One passed after childbirth. So he ended up caring for a total of 7 children. My dad was one of 7. He was third in line, I believe. But the thing is, he was in the military. He was a part of the Army Air Corps. That was actually right before they actually had the Air Force, the United States Air Force.
Yeah, in World War II, they didn't actually have the Air Force.
Yeah, during that time. That's during the time that he was in the military, and he was in the Army Air Corps. He was stationed in Okinawa, Japan during World War II. I'm not exactly sure what he did. I guess I need to do a little bit more digging. And that's the part that kind of saddens me, is that I didn't know these things when he was alive. And had I known, maybe I would have asked him more questions, talked to him more about it.
I think that's pretty common, though, because people go on with their lives regardless of what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
And they live in the now.
Yeah.
And it's not until you either sit down with them or they pass and you start hearing all these stories about what they actually did.
Yeah. And
I think that's for everyone. You see, Grandpa is usually a funny guy.
Yeah. I mean, my grandfather was hilarious. He made light of every situation. He just loved humor, and I think that is going to be his legacy, what he passes on down to his family.
But when you were old enough to really, know him, he was already retired. Yeah. So I think grandparents become these just funny people that are home with you and do all these funny things. You don't really get to know their story before they just became these.
Yeah, before
grandparents.
Yeah,
so
exactly. His life before being a grandfather was quite interesting. Like I said, he was in the Army Air Corps, and I never knew how my grandparents met.
How did they meet?
They met at a dance, and the thing is, he lived in McQueeney, Texas, and he would take a bus from McQueeney, Texas to New Braunfels, Texas, and that's where he met my grandmother. And in fact, my grandmother saw him coming off the bus, and she was with her gal pals and stuff, and as soon as she saw my grandfather come off the bus, she was like, back off, girls. This one's mine.
Woo-hoo.
And she sure enough made him hers. And I just thought that was just so cute and endearing to me because, you know, you never really think when you see the one, you're going to be like, that's the one. I don't know. It happens differently with other people and stuff, but I just thought that was so
that's a cool story.
Cute. Anyways, so yeah, they ended up, you know, living on a farm in Seguin, Texas, or McQueeney, Texas. They're kind of like the same general area. And they lived on a farm. Mm-hmm. They had 7 kids. He worked at a steel mill. Sorry if my accent's coming out.
He worked the steel mill.
Yeah. And, you know, they had, I guess it was like a timeshare, not a timeshare. Like, I'm trying to think of the right word, like a sharecrop.
They're called sharecroppers.
Yeah, they were sharecroppers. And what they did is they worked the farm, they lived on it, but their way of paying
the
for
way to pay their rent or whatever you want to call
like that.
it,
They actually
having to work the land.
Yeah. And so, I mean, they had 7 kids, so they would get up super early in the morning and they would go out and pick cotton. I mean, this was back in like 1950 something,
the
late
40s and 50s
probably in the 1950s, more or less, and into the 1960s, I believe. But yeah, they picked cotton. My dad actually picked cotton. I just like that just kind of blows my mind. But yeah, he would take his kids out. They would wake up super early in the morning, take his kids out, go pick cotton, and, you know, in the wee hours of the morning. And then after a while, he would stop picking cotton and leave his family to continue to pick cotton. And he would go to work at the steel mill. And then when he'd get off of work around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he would come back to the farm and continue to pick cotton. And then, you know, probably till the sun went down or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, continue to take care of his kids. And I mean, having 7 kids,
that alone is a feat
to care for. That's a job in itself, and of itself, pretty much. Sorry if I can't talk. I'm getting a little emotional, but that's just amazing. I mean, I can't even go to like a 9-to-5 job, desk job nonetheless, and then come home and, you know, cook dinner and, you know, feed the dogs and maybe clean the house.
We don't even have 7 kids, and it's still hard enough.
It's pretty much a chore, and it takes up a lot of our time just to do the daily things that we do. And I'm just like, this man did all this stuff to care for his family of 7 kids and a wife. You know, I just find that so incredibly amazing.
Yeah, that's a Superman award for sure.
He was definitely a Superman, and my dad is still my hero and my Superman as well. But I have to say that my bullshit of the week is going to be the stupid non-for-profit hospitals that open up. It's like this entity of hospitals. They open up all these hospitals all over the place. And they have them run on skeleton crews.
Bullshit.
Yeah, that's above and beyond me. It's ridiculous.
Which I don't get, because
I think that they miss the word care in healthcare when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, and you know, I have to say that, like, the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry, that's what I'm looking for. The pharmaceutical industry is what's really killing healthcare.
That, and also all these hospitals that are actually profit entities.
Yeah. I mean,
Because once again, we'll dedicate another episode to this whole the capitalism way of not looking ahead, planning ahead, and just running on quarterly projections, where everything is to quote unquote keep the shareholders happy, which means that every quarter you're supposed to generate more money than the quarter before. And some industries you can run with profit. I'm still opposed to the whole quarterly stuff. But when you try to run healthcare generating you profit, so basically what we're talking about is we don't just have a bunch of staff such as doctors and nurses aides and the equipment. Because yes, that costs money and they should be paid well. But on top of that, these hospitals are supposed to generate a profit on top of that. So once everything is paid for, they're supposed to show that there's money in the bank. And every quarter, they're supposed to bring in more money to the bank than they did the quarter before. It doesn't leave much for the actual care. Because, they'll run on skeleton crews. And I mean, seriously, nurses are underpaid in general. They should get paid a lot more than they are.
And they're overworked.
Yes, I was going to say that number two. Anybody who's pulled a 12-hour shift knows that come the 9th hour, you're ready to just pack up and
done.
Go. You're not functioning right. And it's not that person's fault. It's
Fatigue
the hours work.
Kind of sets in and you're just not performing at your
not top, at your maximum, no.
Maximum performance.
So to underpay these nurses and then have them work 12-hour shifts, for instance, there's no care in that at the end.
No, not at all. And I mean, they have nurses' aides, but even then, I mean, after a while, that just, healthcare, taking care of anybody takes a toll on you.
Definitely. And you can't be doing it on too long a shifts or anything.
Yeah. So I think the healthcare industry really has to revamp what they're doing. Because I feel like from what I've seen with grandparents and loved ones in the hospital and stuff like that, I have so many loved ones and friends and family that have been in the hospital. I've been there myself as well, and seeing
I was around there too. And let me say that was an experience.
Like it's just insane. They're tired, and they get to the point where they become numb to what they're doing.
Well, and they can't function. When you were in the hospital and lost all oxygen, it's really simple to open up that little oxygen tank and pump in more. I had to do it for the nurse because she didn't know what the fuck she was going to do.
Yeah. And even then, when my grandfather was in the hospital and my dad was there at his bedside and he stopped breathing, a nurse came in and she's like over here trying to do a procedure or prep my grandfather to get ready to go do a procedure, and he wasn't breathing. My dad saw that he wasn't breathing, and the nurse couldn't even tell that he wasn't breathing. I was like, how does someone who's never worked in healthcare see that someone's not breathing, and yet you've got a medical professional that's like totally blind to it?
Right. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I mean...
And I've also seen, some of these supposedly colleges that give people a so-called education.
They don't get me started on that.
Same thing. No, but it starts there too, because they do it for profit and don't give people the proper education.
The proper training and stuff. Yeah, I agree with you.
And healthcare in all just needs to reform in one way, shape, or form.
Exactly. So I'm calling these like non-for-profit hospitals that run on skeleton crews bullshit of the week, because they fucking suck. I'm sorry.
They do, and it's not you guys that have to work there. And I'm not just
being biased because my grandfather passed away this week, but I've seen it numerous amount of times,
Yeah, you guys should be more concerned about the care in healthcare than generating money. If you have to run your facilities on skeleton crews, then how about less facilities and staff the ones you keep open with more competent people?
Competent, qualified people. Exactly. So, rest in peace, Grandpa. I love you.
And with that being said, we noticed that you guys like when we talk music.
Yeah.
The episode with the Rocknroll and Prozac had a lot, especially on SoundCloud, a lot more listeners. So we've decided that since we are music lovers,
yes, we love music.
We can do a short little introduction of ourselves when it comes to music, what we like and not, etc. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk a bit more in the podcast about rock and roll related things, good and bad.
Yeah.
So, you want me to go first?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So, when it comes to music, I really like. I'm kind of diverse, but I like guitar-based heavy stuff. Everything from the 60s psychedelia and garage rock, like the Sonics, Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix. I like what today is classified, I think, as like classic rock.
Yeah.
But like 70s hard rock and heavy metal, Black Sabbath, Thin Lizzy, AC/DC, some of the 80s stuff. I really love the original punk stuff, Johnny Thunder, Sex Pistols, The Clash. And like I said before, I like a lot of the new bands too, Imperial State Electric, Dead Lord, that today unfortunately don't get them to mainstream, but they're still out there. And I've also played, I'm a musician, I play the guitar, I've played in a bunch of bands and toured.
Lucky
me. And I build little guitar cabinets. Well, they're kind of big, but yeah, I build the guitar equipment and guitars too, and I run our little home studio.
Yeah.
And Michelle, she's the modern one of us.
Yeah. I would, I guess, say that I'm like a all around music lover. I mean, I love all kinds of music. I don't, what you say, oh my gosh, I'm thinking of the word. I don't discriminate when it comes to music. I like all kinds of music, really. But I do mainly like rock. Classic rock, of course. You know, my favorite band, The Doors. I love Janis Joplin. She's my girl. Janis, rest in peace. And I've even been to her house, where she grew up.
That's
in
so cool.
Rockport. Yes, that was awesome. We did a friend of mine and I we did a little pilgrimage to her hometown and stuff. That was kind of cool. And they even had like a little museum.
That's awesome.
Dedicated to Janis Joplin. And I have to say that my girl Janis, she didn't get a lot of credit for what she did.
No.
And that's really sad. It really breaks my heart because she didn't get the credit. But, you know, that her legacy lives on.
It certainly does. And especially in like music circuits.
Yeah.
And you also like some more quote unquote modern or new stuff.
Oh, of course. You know, and of course I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And I think my actual, I guess, taste for music budded during the 90s with Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots.
So like the alternative grunge scene.
The alternative grunge scene, which, you know, Stone Temple Pilots are like one of my all-time favorite bands.
I forgot I love Motorhead.
Oh, yes. Motorhead's awesome. But also I like Queens of the Stone Age. And of course I love Alabama Shakes.
Yeah, they're good.
They definitely broke out with their sound
Yeah, they have a unique sound.
Different. They're different.
They're not just like a throwback, like so many new bands, just being a straight throwback to the 60s or 70s.
Right.
They really have a unique kind of sound going.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I love like a lot. I'm a big blues fan. I like blues and some jazz. Of course, one of my, I love Diana Krall. And I have to say that I love her because she has an awesome voice and because she married Elvis Costello, which I have a slight crush on. So,
and who's your favorite blues artist?
My favorite blues artist would have to be, gosh, I don't know. I would have to say
that's my problem with the blues too. I like it, but I don't know.
I mean, I like blues and I love the sound, but I don't have a specific artist that I like, and I think that's my fault because I really don't research. When it comes to the blues, it's like if it's something that I hear that I like, I'm like, yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
Dang it. I was hoping you were going to say Stevie Ray Vaughn so I could wrap this into our like music talk of the week.
Well, Stevie Ray Vaughn, I mean, I like him and everything, his guitar sound, his Texas sound and everything, but I've not really delved too much into his music. But when I do hear it, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I like it.
Well, dang it. I hope you were going to say that.
But I like soul, like Otis Redding and Sam Cooke, Yeah.
If
you've never heard of them, look them up. Come on.
We're pretty diverse when it comes to music. We like a lot of reggae and ska, too.
Yeah,
like
reggae.
The Jamaican version.
Yeah, the Jamaican
Not the whole third generation Southern California ska, but the Jamaican ska.
Oh, don't get him started on that. But that might be another topic later on.
Yeah, that could be another topic. But today, I wanted, and that's why I said, I was hoping you were going to say Stevie Ray is my favorite blues artist because you mentioned Janis and how underrated she is.
Yeah.
And lately I've been listening a lot to Johnny Winter, who is a blues guitarist from Texas.
Yeah.
And something struck me. And I don't know why this is, but for you guys out there, especially maybe not living in the U.S., there's this thing, I don't know, should we call it Texas pride?
Yeah, it's Texas pride.
I mean, like Texans love Texas.
I mean, if you've ever met a Texan outside of Texas, there's like this massive pride, and there's people that come into Texas and their first like introduction to Texas culture, they're like pretty much shocked because people have this Texas pride, it's Texas
everything's
bigger in Texas,
Texas should almost still be a republic in a lot of people's views. I mean, we're making it a bit worse than it is, I guess. But I mean, Texans are really proud of Texas. And like you said, if they move somewhere else, they're going to have Texas shower curtains, Texas stars, Texas waffle irons.
Yeah.
Go Texas.
My brother, he's in the Navy and he has... a Texas waffle iron. He has Texas shower curtains. He has, probably Texas underwear, with the Texas flag on it or something like that. But
yeah, so it's a lot of Texas pride. And this brings me to the kind of surprising thing, because Texas pride encompasses everything, right? Like
from food to clothes to artwork.
Everything. But when it comes to music, the only real artist that's being really Texas celebrated is Stevie Ray Vaughn. You have Johnny Winter. You have, like you mentioned, Janis Joplin is from Texas. ZZ Top. Reverend Horton Heat. You have all these acts that have made it, whether it's in a subgenre or subculture or a bit wider.
Right.
They're Texans. But there's no like Texas pride love for them. The only one you always hear about, Stevie Ray, the Texas sound. Well, if you want to be picky about it, Johnny Winter invented the Texas sound. Stevie Ray got a lot of his influences from Johnny, who had already been playing for years. Mm-hmm. But you never hear Texans go, yeah, Johnny Winter or Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
And I was kind of just wondering, and what you guys' opinions out there too is, why is that? The only thing I can think of is that Stevie Ray was a Texan even after being famous, as in residing here, being very, cowboy hat and boots, everything we talked about.
Even when you initially posed that question to me, I was like, I don't know.
Is it because some of these other, like Janis Joplin, didn't become famous until she was in San Francisco and involved in the whole Ashbury Heights hippie movement?
Yeah. And even then, I mean, for the most part, she kind of disowned her Texas roots because she wasn't liked in Texas. She had to move away from her hometown to actually, start her musical career.
That's true.
She went to UT Austin, and this one story just totally breaks my heart every time I hear about it or read about it. She was voted the ugliest man on campus.
Oh, yeah.
That is so fucking sad. Who does that to a person?
Well, that's straight out bullying, which I guess was more accepted way back when, but
bullying's been around for ages, but whatever.
It was just not called bullying.
It's so sad. It breaks my heart.
It is really sad, but no, I was just curious, what are you guys' thoughts on that we have all these, and I mean, ZZ Top aren't ashamed of their Texas roots.
No, not at all.
But they don't get much of Texas love.
No, I mean, from what I've seen, there's a lot of Texas bands here that have a lot of Texas love, but anything outside of Texas, they're not really well liked.
No, but I'm talking about acts that became more or less major. There's people even in other places of the world that like these bands. Mm-hmm. But the Texans don't acknowledge them. Mm-hmm. However, these bands that are really good and do well in Texas, but maybe not outside of Texas, they get the quote-unquote Texas love. Is it some sort of that they're staying local and just sticking around here?
I don't know. I mean, well, with the way the music industry's going and stuff like that, you just stick around where you're liked.
True, but I'm still just fascinated
even like the Toadies. They're constantly touring all over Texas. I mean, they've been around since, the early 90s, late 80s kind of thing?
Late 80s, I think. But do they get a lot of Texas love, though?
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't really associate them necessarily with Texas.
Oh, I do.
Or like Rocky Erickson, who's been in Austin since the 60s.
I've never even heard of him.
He's acknowledged in the music scene, but you don't really hear much about, like, his Texas roots or whatever.
Right.
So I just want to know from you guys if there's anybody in Texas here. Why do you guys abandon the guys that make it outside of the state? Shouldn't you be proud of it?
Willie Nelson.
Yeah. Willie is another perfect example. You don't really get a lot of Texas love for him. He's loved everywhere else, but I'm just curious as to why, because if I was the mayor of a little town where one of these artists were from, whether they're still active or deceased or whatever, mm-hmm. I would do much more than have a little inconspicuous museum that you kind of have to know about to go to. I mean, I would blow it up. The hometown of ZZ Top. Come and see Billy Gibbons' first cowboy hat.
I mean, when we visited the Rockport, it was actually like a Rockport museum. Uh-huh. And they had a section of the museum dedicated to Janis Joplin. But, I mean,
I would totally put that in my tourist brochure. That we actually have
they
this.
Really do. They do that as well. And there's like a Texas historical marker in front of the house that she grew up.
Oh, that's cool.
But for the most part, Rockport, Texas is a small coastal town that's pretty much dying, because the industry has been milked for so long that, there's nothing there anymore.
No, so I would make a really big whoop-de-woo about it. Get some tourists coming over there. And I mean, Beaumont, Texas, what do they have?
Racism?
Right?
No, I mean, that's for what I've heard. I've never really been to Beaumont.
I wouldn't put that in my tourist brochure. Come here, we're racist. I would put Johnny Winter and have some guitars of him and display, and really brought, that these artists are from, here's where they're from.
Yeah.
Come check it out. So, yeah, give us a comment, guys. Why is that? Why do Texans give love to the local artists, which is great?
Uh-huh.
And now we're talking a bunch of old guys, but hey, actually, Gary Clark Jr., why is there so little love for Gary Clark? Is it just because he doesn't put a Texas flag on his signature model?
Freaking amazing.
Yeah, but the rest of the world doesn't acknowledge he's amazing too. Was he nominated or awarded a Grammy? I can't remember.
I think he's been awarded some Grammys.
But you don't hear a lot of Texas love for him. I mean, come on, the guy is talented.
But you know what? It's because he's not mainstream pop music.
I guess
because I mean, if you're not, the Backstreet Boys or forgive me, but I don't really listen to mainstream music. If you're not like Rihanna or who else is out there, like Sam Cooke or what's that redhead?
Sam Cooke.
Redhead. What's his name?
Sam Cooke was mainstream in the 60s,
well,
baby.
no, there's that. What's his name? He's like...
I don't know.
And he's from your area.
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, so that's how much we know about mainstream music and stuff like that. But like I said, if you're not a part of that scene, then nobody really wants to have anything to do with you, kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like when I I don't watch the Grammys per se, because when it all comes out, it's all that bullshit hip hop, and I'm not too much of a fan of hip hop. I mean, if it sounds good, I'll listen to it, but I'm not going to go out and don't chastise me for saying I'm not going to go out and buy their CD, but it's, I have to say that if you're not part of that genre that's the mainstream genre that's being put out on the sound waves these days, then you're really not going to be recognized as a great artist, I guess.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Let us know, because it was just fascinating to me. Like I said, there's even waffle irons displaying Texas pride, but there's no pride in the artists that make it out of this state. Let us know why. What are your thoughts on it? Please. You can comment on the YouTube.
There's the Texas SoundCloud. Tornadoes. That just popped into my head.
Yeah, but they're probably not known outside.
Flaco Jimenez and the Texas Tornadoes.
They're probably not known
Wooly
outside.
Bully.
Bully.
But that was like back in the 60s?
Yeah, and I don't think they did the original version even.
Oh, okay. See, that's how much I know.
But that was a great display of Texas pride. Guys, you can hear us at YouTube and SoundCloud. And you can leave comments there or on our Facebook page, or you can email us directly at thepodsters@gmail.com.
You notice how he says that instead of me, because I keep forgetting what these different things are called.
Well, you want to do the outro then?
No.
Well, it was a pleasure doing episode 11, and we'll talk to you guys later. Please let us know what you think.
Bye.
Bye.